Hey everybody, welcome back. Today's video is an album review on. I wanted to do one Human League, and I was like, I put some other albums in a hat and picked one out, and I picked out one that I actually don't own, and one that I've never heard all the way through. Um, I'm very in tune with the first like five or six Human League, maybe the first five Human Leagues albums, and I really liked Octopus in 1995, but of all the albums that I chose to review is actually one that I'd never heard before. I only heard two songs off this album, and it's their 1990 album called Romantic. Um, the only two songs I heard from this album are the two singles, "Heart Like a Wheel" and "Soundtrack to a Generation." So I'm gonna go through this album and score it, each song, and then sort of go over the overall view and then give it an overall score. Um, so yeah, Human League. First song is "Kiss the Future." Um, Maybe I should have prefaced that this is not a well-regarded album, so keep that in mind. I don't know. I don't know how many people have heard this album, but I'm already laughing because I'm looking at my. I started to look at my notes and I remembered because I did this a couple days ago. I heard the song. I heard this album and I was reviewing it. It's kind of made me laugh. I don't. This album is really corny. It has some really corny moments, and I started to look at my 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 notes, and it kind of reminded me of when I was listening to this through this album, and I was kind of like laughing at some of it. It was kind of embarrassing. Let's put it that way. "Kiss the Future," the first song. It's kind of catchy. It's trying to is it trying to be too hip? Um, when I looked at when I looked at this album, and I was like, let me see who produced this album, because Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis produced "Human," and a few. I don't know how many songs off the album. I guess maybe most of their '86 album called "Crash." I think it was "Crash." Yeah, I think it was called "Crash," right? Was their album called "Crash," or is that OMD's album called "Crash"? They both call their album "Crash"? Huh. I'm trying to think if they both called their 1986 album "Crash." OMD. No, no. OMD's a junk culture and. Okay, maybe it's not "Crash." It's just okay. Human League's album's called "Crash." I was like, I was thinking was OMD's album called "Crash" too the same year, but I don't think they had an album in '85. I think it was '80 or '86. I think it was '85, and I think it was just junk culture. For some reason, I thought it was "Crash" for a second there. But so Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis produced "Human," and of course they got a really. I think that song went to number one, so obviously they felt that probably getting a good producer, or somebody to sort of help them with their sound would be beneficial. And then so I looked at the producing on this, and I think it was Spike. Was it Spike Jones or Spike Tent who who's done some stuff with not Spike Jones, the video guy, but Spike Trent. So I think it's Spike Trent. Like he did some stuff with like Meat Records, if I'm not mistaken. Was it Depeche Mode, or maybe um, maybe some of the mute bands, maybe Eurasia or something like that. And then there was another person. Wish I could remember who it was. I don't know why I didn't write it down, but he did a couple of songs, and then he did a couple other songs on this album, and I can kind of tell where they what they added in over the normal Human League's sound, and I don't really feel that they really helped them at all on this album. So I think I would have to say, if Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis helped them make a couple good songs, like I know "Crash" isn't even looked at as a really good Human League album, compared to their kind of avant-garde stuff, early experimental stuff with Travelogue and blanking on the first album. or their second album. It's Travelogue and then another long one. Of course, then they have Dare and geez, I'm blanking on the other album too. But then their early, 80, early 80 albums. Of course, they had Fascination, 12 inch as well. But a lot of those songs had Mirror Man and of course Don't You Want to Hurt Me and a lot of good singles. I really like Life on Your Own is one of my favorites, and Sound of the Crowd I really like. Of course, Being Boiled is good. I like Mirror Man. I don't mind Fascination, although it gets a little long in the tooth. I really like All That Matters, from Crash. But I really didn't catch any. I really didn't get anything that they really added. I mean, I could tell some parts where they kind of sort of try to be hip, and this first song is one of them. Like they were trying a little bit too hard. I can tell on this song to try to be different, and it's 1990. There's a lot of bands around 1990 that try to do something different. Try to be urban, try to be cool, try to be more hip, and it didn't work out well. And this album is a good example of that. This might be the leading example of that. I gave Kiss the Future 1.5 stars. It's kind of catchy. It kind of grows on you a little bit, you know. Then the track called The Doorway. I think Joanna's singing this one. I had a crush on Joanna back in the days. I have to admit, I really thought she was like Lebanon is one of my favorite songs, Human League songs, and man, her in that video. All right, let me change subject. But yeah, she's singing the song. I really like the bridge. The bass line's pretty good. The chorus isn't bad. It's kind of one of the better songs on the album. I got 2.25 stars. And then Heart Like a Wheel. I really like the opening. The main hook of the album. The main hook of the melody is a little cheesy, but it works well. It's kind of a nice cheesy. The lyrics are a bit corny. There's a lot of corny lyrics in this album by Mr. Oki, Mr. Phil Oki. The beat and the bass line are pretty good though on Heart Like a Wheel. I really like the driving. It's kind of the hallmark Human League sound. The girl singing in the background. Chorus is good. I give it 3.25 stars. It's my favorite song on the album. And then Men Are Dreamers. It's kind of slow to work itself out. The lyrics are really rough, but it's kind of corny in a nice way. It's 1.75 stars. Can't really put it in the good. It's just I couldn't get it up there. Then track number 5, Mr. Moon and Mr. Sun. What an odd name that is. Mr. Moon and Mr. Sun. The beat is really bad. The guitar is really rough. The fake keyboards on the horns are really rough. The bass line and the 808 kick, it sounds like an 808 machine. Those are not bad. It's not a bad song. It's just trying to be too hip, and it just kind of comes out kind of flat and corny. And so I just gave it 1 star. It's okay. Soundtrack to a Generation. This song really tests your limits on what you think is a corny song that's tolerable. This song will definitely test that limit on your new wave corniness scale. It's kind of like almost hitting that red pretty hard for me. Like the lyrics in here, if you know the song, you're probably already laughing with me. But it's like, look up the soundtrack to a Generation, that song, and look up the lyrics or listen to the song. And he's like, "Oh wow, a soundtrack to a generation," and then the girls go, "Holy cow, it's a soundtrack to a generation." It's really bad. I don't know. Like, who would say "holy cow" in a song when you're trying to talk about like futuristic music or soundtrack to a generation, and you're here saying "holy cow"? or wow. I don't know. I forgot to. This song reminds me of, like, I don't know if you guys ever been to like Magic Mountain or Disneyland, and there's like a band. There's like a two or three piece girl and boy act, and they're sort of like, they're not really like singing their own music, but they sort of sound like the Partridge Family, and they're sort of like, they're like, they got hired from Disneyland, hired them out there, and they're sort of singing like at 2 p.m. in the daytime, and like nobody's really paying attention to them because everybody's in the food court eating, and like if that was an 80s band, like in 1990, that's what this would sound like. That's what they would be doing. Soundtrack to a Generation. It would sound like that. But like Human League, they can kind of pull off some corniness. I gave it 2 stars. I gave it a good rating. I just, if you're not a Human League fan, you are. I would say I'm a huge Human League fan. If somebody's like a 10 on their all time, it's hard to rate how much of a fan you are of the albums. Um, I don't know. Is the first album, is it Hysteria and then Dare? I just thought of the first and the second album of their 80s period when they sort of hit it big. Is it Hysteria and then Dare? I think it is. Um, I should have brought out the albums, but I don't have Romantic, so I didn't. Usually I put the album here. But yeah, it's just kind of like so maybe if you're a if you're if you're a Human League fan, maybe you don't you kind of overlook their corniness because they're corny anyways. I don't know. Maybe that's it. But I got it 2 stars. But soundtrack generation, man, that song will test your limits. Track number 7, but it gets worse on this album. It's got some doozies coming up. Track number 7, Rebound. It's not a bad song. It sort of sounds like being boiled a little bit, or Sound of a Crowd. It kind of has that rawness to it, which is kind of cool. The tone of the girl singing voice, I think it's Joanna, is a little odd in the song, but I think it's a good song overall. I got 2.25 star. The stars are going out. This song actually surprised me. I think it's one of the better songs on the album. I actually rated it the second highest. I hadn't heard it before. Again, I hadn't heard this album, just 2 singles off it, and I think it's better beat. It's a good groove. Maybe this is where Spike Trent I think he had done this one, or maybe it was Harold Faltermeyer. Trying to think if he had a hand in this. Um, but it's not trying too hard. It's got a good melody, bass line, nice and smooth. Like Human League can write some good, catchy, smooth songs that are good. It's just sometimes when they try too hard, and maybe they don't have enough. They don't have enough ideas. There's some really bad tracks on there. There's some bad ones on there. Track number 9, Let's Get Together Again. I don't even have any notes on this song. I just put it as a half star. I must have been really frustrated with the song and couldn't find anything to say about the song to give it just a half star. I'm surprised they even give it a half star. I didn't even say anything about it. So I don't know. I can't remember that song very well. Track 10, Get It Right This Time. At least it's not overly cheesy, I put. Right after I wrote this, he hits one of the worst lyrics and vocal parts ever. So, yeah, I'm trying. I faintly remember this now, but I don't remember what he said. I just have one of the worst lyrics and vocal parts I've ever heard. I put the chorus isn't bad, so I got 1.5 stars. I can't remember what he says. Get it right this time. I can't remember what he says on that. I'm gonna have to look that up, and I'll put it in the notes and see what he. I'll go back to it and see what he sung, because it must have really been bad, because I didn't even repeat it. It was I ignored it. It was just like, that was awful. Um, but that's okay for you. He can sing some really goofy things. Like, he has such a strong voice, and then you hear him talking about how he wants to hold somebody nice and hold somebody well, or he wants to he misses holding you and stuff, and he's got such a deep voice. It's kind of weird. I don't know. Sometimes it just doesn't work because the music's corny too, and you're just like, really, really, okay. You feel that? You feel that way deep down inside? Nah, I'm just kidding. But there's just some rough stuff on here. The good about this album. Let's go to the overall. It's better than not having a Human League at all album at all. I wrote that. So you go from 1986, right? The next album after Romantic was 1995. So we didn't even have a Human League album for 9 years, except for this one. So are we happy that there was this album and then instead of none? I guess so. You know, we got some good songs. So that's kind of like the good about, hey, we actually had a Human League album, for a while. I really like Heart Like a Wheel though, and Stars Are Going Out. I think those are two really strong tracks. I like those two, and that's that. And I think they learned their lesson when Octopus came out, because there's only like 8 or 9 songs on that album, and I think one song, the John Cleese was funny, which I really like. That song is just an instrumental, and I think they have another song called Ninth Configuration, or I might be getting confused with the other two album by the other two, because that has an instrumental, and it's both Green albums too. So it always confused me. The other two's album came out in '92, and then their album came out in '95. But Tell Me When, and there's some other good songs on there, but they kind of learned their lesson, and they sort of just and trust me, 1995, like a band like Human League doing a more techno album was really a stretch, and would really kind of, like, if it had really a good chance of being uh, not being done well, and not lasting and not sounding good 20, 30 years later. I think now, 30 years later, like it still sounds like a good album, Octopus. Um, Unlike this album, so they did a good job of that album, and it doesn't even have a full album of songs. I think it has 8 or 9 songs, and I think again one's an instrumental. So I think on that album they kind of like either they took their time a little bit more, or didn't press anything, or tried not to go with trends. And I think that's one of the most important things is don't go with the trends of trying to sound hip, because you will fall flat on your head most of the time. And thankfully, they didn't do it on that album, but I think on this album they did a little bit of that. The opportunities on the album, the mixing isn't great. The levels on some of the instruments are far too loud. Um, is it okay? Let me see what I put on this. I said, is it okay? Is it good? Is it really bad? Is it trying too hard? Badly influenced? Producer help? Question mark, question mark. So I think all of those are kind of my critiques on it. Is it okay? Is it good? Is it really bad? Is it trying too hard? Is it, is it badly influenced by other people in the band, or I don't know. Like, it's just there's a lot of things that don't work on here. You can tell it's Human League, but you can tell it's like somebody else trying to do the beat machines, or I don't know how involved Human League are, or Oki is with the music. But it seems like when they get a producer, like it really affects how they do their albums. And I can't say that for a fact, but it's just because they don't have that many albums. I think after you can tell it a lot on Crash, you can tell a lot on this album, and you can tell a lot on Octopus. But after that, I think they only had 1 or 2 albums in the last 30 years. So and I haven't heard those two. So I'd be curious to see if those did. But the early '80s albums, I'll have to see who produced them, but I feel like they didn't produce. They didn't have anybody produce them, and that's why they worked more consistently as an album. But yeah, when I add up the stars for this album, I have 19 stars divided by 10 songs, so a 1.90 stars per rating. Again, 1.90. That kind of generally that'll put it, you know, Let's see on my scale here, 1.90. That's going to put it in the high 40s. Um, in between 1.5 and 2.0. So I put in the high 40s, but I deducted it a few extra points because it's not a good album. I got it 45 out of 100. I can't, I couldn't really give it any extra points. In fact, I deducted a couple extra points just because there's a lot of corny songs on here. It's just, I mean, I got one, two, what was it, three, 4 tracks that are under 2 stars. That's pretty rough. So you got 4 out of the 10 songs that aren't even good. That's really going to hurt the rating. And the bad, the okay songs outnumber really the good and very good songs on this album. And I just felt like I had to deduct a couple extra points because even though it's a 1.9, it's close. It probably 1.9 should be closer to like 48 if I was to, put that point system into the album's point system. But I just kind of deducted a couple extra points. It's just not there on this album. But yeah, but it was still a fun album. And that's the thing is, this album is less than okay. I'm 40. Anything in the 40s for my album reviews is below average for the group. Nothing really very good. It's mostly in the below average to okay range for the most part. Pretty straightforward, right? But I'm still happy I listened to this because I pulled out a new Human League favorite song. I do like The Stars Are Out. I do really like that song, so I'm happy I got a chance to listen to this. I already liked Heart Like a Wheel. I already knew I'd like that song. In fact, I have the 12-inch in my want list because I need to get the extended version. But, I gained a new favorite song by the Human League, The Stars Are Going Out. I also got some comedy from a few other songs and some few lyrics. Some good examples of some real cheesy lyrics that I can share other people as a good example. Again, I'll put the one for track 10 in the bottom here. I just couldn't remember what it says, but it's one of the worst lyrics and vocal parts I think I've ever heard. It's really bad. But yeah, that's my album review for Human League's 1990 album, Romantic. And it's question mark. Romantic? Is this romantic? And that's probably why I put, is it good? Is it really bad? Is it trying too hard? I don't know. 45 out of 100 score. Yeah, just right under okay. So a little below average. All right. Thanks so much for watching.